The PlayStation 5 controller has been revealed for some time now and is officially called the DualSense. The naming scheme breaks away from the tradition by not calling it the DualShock 5. Anyway, there were some people saying that the new controller reminds them of the Xbox controller. This is likely due to the new outlines or new body lines that are now much closer to this generation's Xbox controller than the older PS4 controller. There was also an emphasis on the new trigger features that is somewhat familiar but not exactly like the impulse triggers found on the Xbox controller. Let's take a look at some but not all of the changes from Sony's controller. The underboobs are now gone due to the middle part being extended downwards. The upper part is now slightly thicker. The grips have lost some of its curves on the outer part but are slightly thicker on the outside, longer and have a more pointed tip, but it has shaved some of its thickness from the inner part. The shoulder buttons have now become wider and slightly more tilted. The share and options are smaller, moved further from the center, and placed further from above the face buttons and D-pad. Also, the share button is now called the create button, and both the share and create now have icons instead of text. The light bar at the top from the second generation DualShock 4 have been moved at the bottom edge of the touchpad, and it looks like it's a separate light that looks similar to the PS4 Pro's power and notification light and the power light of Sony TVs. This light bar also seems to have a second part that extends diagonally to the sides and around the top and might be able to show different colors aside from the part at the center bottom. All of these make space for a slightly larger touchpad. The third row speaker grills are now gone. The PlayStation button now has a more sophisticated mold and there's an additional mute button. The flat circular bed where the D-pad and face buttons sit, the concave part in the middle of the D-pad buttons, the colors of the face buttons are now gone. With these changes and additions, this is what the new next generation PlayStation controller looks like when facing the top, that is. Now let's do some cherry-picked comparisons with the PS4 and Xbox controllers. You can see that the new PS5 controller's general body outline is much closer to the Xbox controller than the older PS4 controller. The older PS4 controller have more curves and a distinct square outline due to the touchpad and much more rounded edges of the grips. It's also slightly thinner in the middle part and have grips that are shorter. The two-tone parts are also at the tip of the grips. With the new PS5 controller, there are diagonal outlines from the touchpad, less curves, about as big and tall as the Xbox controller, and have an overall more streamlined body closer to that of the Xbox controller. The two tones now run across the entire body, a bit more similar to the two tones found at the bottom edge of the Xbox controller. Viewing the controllers at a different angle, you will see that the older PS4 controller has an indentation on top of the shoulder buttons and has a gap between the shoulder and trigger buttons. The opening of the shoulder buttons curves inwards towards the middle, and the line across the body wraps around the bottom of the grips. The middle part of the controller has a V-taper, a large light bar, and the charging port located towards the bottom. With the PS5 controller, the light bar is now much more smaller, if that's still even a light bar at all. Like the Xbox One controller, the shoulder buttons are larger, there are no indentations on top of the shoulder buttons, no gap between the shoulder and the trigger buttons, the charging port is at the center of the device, and the body line goes straight through the end of the grips. Even if some of these changes make the new controller look closer to the Xbox controller, it still has its own distinct look and is pushing for more features with additions such as haptic feedback and a microphone array. The larger size was needed to house newer features. Some did say it looks a little funny, like the controller has some sort of tank top. It won't be long now for Sony to show more angles of the new controller. From the last few photos provided, we can't really see any headphone jacks, but Sony's product manager said that it still has one. I'm really curious to see if they're purposely hiding what's under the new controller to build hype. Maybe there's a new set of buttons down there. That wouldn't be surprising since they released the back button attachment for the PS4 controller. That would simply be amazing, because that would allow PlayStation 5 exclusives to have much better base gameplay designs. I think the new controller is gonna have similar battery life due to Sony's wording about it on the PlayStation blog. They were also emphasizing about the renamed share button, now called create button. I think that this is also why it has the fastest drive among all the consoles. It might be helpful for some sophisticated video editing, while a game is running on the background. I'm hoping that the first batch of controllers won't have the flaking issues of the analog sticks like the first batch of PlayStation 4 controllers. We'll see.